The FBI says Youngblood and German national Felix Backel were the only people in a car that multiple U.S. Border Patrol agents stopped on I-91 for an immigration inspection last Monday. Within 15 minutes, Youngblood pulled out a gun, shot, and ultimately killed Agent Mayland. Backel died at the scene.
That was Alexis Crandall reporting. Youngblood was taken to the Dartmouth Medical Center for her injuries. She's facing several federal charges in this case and is scheduled to appear in court this afternoon.
You know, I think that, Mike, that as far as the FBI and the prosecution of this case, we would expect a murder first-degree charge, but yet that's not what we're seeing. We're seeing like a possession of a weapon and all kinds of other charges, but I think they're trying to put this case together and see if they can draw a nexus between Vallejo, California, and Pennsylvania, and perhaps even like a RICO case. But it's proceeding in a sort of a strange way. It's not, there's very little information coming out from the mainstream media. I just wanted, there's a reporter named Andy No, and I think a lot of you guys, he's sort of a freelance reporter, but he wrote a story on this that someone just recently sent me. And this is what he had to say. And he's not the only one, but I'm curious as to why the mainstream media didn't get all over this. Liberal media has been uninterested in investigating the couple involved in shooting dead a U.S. Border Patrol agent in Coventry, Vermont, near the Canadian border on Inauguration Day. Why? Both in the duo are leftist trans militants. One of the deceased armed militants is a German believed to be in the country on H-1B visa. The duo is allegedly connected to a trans terror cell. Federal law enforcement have been surveilling German man Felix Ophelia Buchholz and Seattle at the UW student Teresa Milo Youngblood after staff at Lydenville, Vermont motel reported seeing them with black tactical clothing, weapons, and protective militia-style equipment. When the duo was pulled over on January 20th, Youngblood allegedly shot dead Officer David Mayland in a surprise attack. In the returning fire, Buchholz, who was also armed, was killed. Youngblood was injured and survived. This is from Andy No. He wrote, I spoke with Jessica Taylor, a Berkeley, California woman who had met Buchholz over the years. She confirmed that Buchholz is trans. As Ophelia Felix Buchholz's social media and leaked private communications suggest, Buchholz was connected to the violent trans militant cell or cult centered around a person who used the alias Ziz. Members of the trans group have been involved in violence. Buchholz was a math genius who graduated from U Waterloo in Canada before getting a job at Tower Research Capital in New York around 2021. Surviving trans accomplice Teresa Milo Youngblood, who's accused of being the one that fired the shots that killed the veteran U.S. Border Patrol officer, has been charged over the homicide. Youngblood is a biological female who identifies as trans and uses pronouns. I can't even pronounce the pronouns they put. Trans terrorism court filings strongly suggest the armed trans duo involved in the deadly attack on a U.S. Border Patrol agent is indeed connected to a murderous trans militant cell allegedly linked to 3 homicides across the U.S. In shocking new details in a court filing today that affirms Andy No's earlier reporting, the trans duo allegedly responsible for the deadly attack on the U.S. border officer allegedly used a gun purchased by a member of the Ziz militant trans cell. That person is linked to murder investigations of 3 elderly people in Vallejo, California, and Delaware County, Pennsylvania. So that is from the freelance reporter, Andy No. And that's the first time we're hearing about this. So is the mainstream media not doing their job or just simply not reporting this because it's an inconvenient truth?
Billy, because that's $1 million question, because all of the information I found and a lot of the information you've got isn't coming from the main, cross-national media. It's coming from local papers out in Vallejo, California, and things like that. So therefore, it's not getting the wide circulation that you would expect, considering what's going on in our country right now with the immigration and the death of a Border Patrol agent, one in the last 14 years. That's big news. So you wonder why. And it's taken us so long now to get all this information, put it together. It's because it's not being reported. I'm hoping it's because, maybe they're distracted by other things and that it's not a conscious disregard of, uncomfortable facts about some of the people who we may think of as victims, but they may actually be capable of engaging in terrorist activities across the nation. We certainly know that Maximilian Snyder himself and his group, when they were out in California, they're capable, readily capable of murder.
Absolutely. And this is Maximilian Snyder on the screen. And according to the newspaper, The Open Vallejo, a man killed in Vallejo was main witness in an upcoming murder trial. And this is dated January 17th. A man stabbed to death earlier this month in Vallejo was a longtime property owner who was set to testify against a group of young tenants who allegedly stabbed him with a samurai sword a little over 2 years ago, according to court records and a friend of the victim. The victim was identified as 82-year-old Curtis Lind, and his friend Thomas Young was stabbed in the neck around 2:30 p.m. January 17th by an assailant wearing a mask and black beanie, according to the Vallejo Police Department. The fatal attack happened on the sidewalk outside Lynn's property on the 300 block of Lemon Street, where multiple trailers and other equipment sit crowded in a yard behind a locked gate. It was not the first alleged attempt on Lynn's life. On November 13th, 2022, he was injured during a violent dispute with tenants at his Lemon Street property, according to police and court records. Young, who said Lind was a close friend, told Open Vallejo in a Friday interview that Lind had been impaled through the chest with a sword in a fight with several tenants who had stopped paying rent during the pandemic. The squatters had become increasingly threatening and violent as Lind sought to have them evicted from his property, including by throwing rocks at him, according to Young. Earlier that morning, several of the tenants asked Lind to come out of his trailer home to help them with an issue, but instead jumped him with a bunch of knives and swords, apparently with the intent of chopping him up and dissolving him in a bath of chemicals, which they had prepared. Lind survived the attack, but was hospitalized for a month, eventually losing his right eye. Young said court records show that Lind shot two of his attackers, injuring one person and killing a 31-year-old Emma Borhanian. So this goes back. There is a history of this, Mike.
Yes.
And this is the group that we're talking about, a dangerous group.
Yeah, they're a bunch of maladjusted, high IQ drifters, this group here. They were on Mr. Lynn's property right before the COVID crisis hit in 2020, and they refused to pay rent. He tried everything he could to get them to pay rent. Things got really heated. They attacked him. Thankfully, he had a firearm, and he, even though he was stabbed in the eye and he was stabbed in the chest, he actually fired on his attackers, killed one of them. And so here he is 2 years later going to trial against them. And, Felix is now, not Felix, Max. I'm sorry, Max. Max is the one. He attacks him and stabs him up and kills him this time. But that's payback. And so therefore, Max is a very violent person. Not only did he take part in the original attack on Mr. Lind, he now actually kills him in 2 years later in 2024. And 2025, I'm sorry, just a couple of weeks ago. And therefore, this group that she's a part of, we don't know whether she was going to go back to California or she was establishing, Youngblood was establishing another residence for them, maybe someplace that was quieter outside of law enforcement purview in California. But this group is as violent as any group out there.
Mike, we may have had it wrong in thinking that the person that she was engaged to, I think we may have reported that it was Felix Buckholz.
Right.
But it turns out to be Maximilian Schneider, who
Right.
I'm going to put on the screen. This is his LinkedIn page, and I'll read some of it because it's quite interesting in regards to he's no dummy. Maximilian Schneider, passionate scholar, data scientist and creator.